Have you ever wondered why your locks are always dry, no matter how much you moisturize them? Well, the answer might be lying in something called hair porosity. Now, hair porosity is something I actually haven't heard a lot of people in hair or in the lock community especially talking about, but I think this is a game changer for determining what products to use on our hair and also how we apply products to our hair to maximize the amount of moisture that our hair is retaining. Hey guys, welcome back to the Dreadlock Culture channel. My name is Nadia, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing what hair porosity is, how it affects your locks, how to determine your hair's porosity, and also how to effectively treat our hair based on our hair's porosity. So let's start by answering the question, what is hair porosity? At the very basic essence or definition, it is our hair's ability to absorb and retain moisture. So when you're looking at the anatomy of a hair strand, the outside part, if you look at it like you think of a cylinder of hair, the outside part has like little overlapping scales. When those scales are compact and very tight together, that is called low porosity. When they're slightly opened up just a little bit, that is medium porosity. And then when they're widely spaced or very opened up, that is high porosity. Some of the characteristics of each of those is that low porosity hair, being that it's so tightly compact, you could say the cuticle part, is that moisture has a hard time going into the inner parts of the hair. And then once it's in, it retains it really well, and it doesn't let go of that moisture as easily, again, because it's so compact. Also, when it comes to products, usually they'll just kind of hang over the surface of the hair versus actually penetrating the hair because it's tightly closed. So it has a really hard time going into the parts, like in the inner parts of the hair. As a result, you can have very oily scalp or very oily hair. And also you have a higher risk of product buildup just because the product cannot really get inside the hair as easily. With medium porosity hair, this is kind of like the sweet spot because it's open enough that it will allow moisture in fairly easily, and then also not as open that it will release that moisture. So it holds moisture in fairly well. And this kind of hair also responds fairly well to most hair treatments. At the same time, you don't want to like overdo it and put too much stuff on your hair because then that could still cause buildup. But for the most part, when you apply moisture to it, it does absorb it and retains it fairly well. And finally, high porosity hair. This is hair that basically the cuticle is opened or widely spaced, and so it allows moisture to come in fairly easily, but it also, the moisture doesn't stay in the hair as easily either. So you could be moisturizing your hair all the time, and then it still feels very dry because it just cannot hold that moisture in. So you can also experience a lot of frizziness, dryness in the hair, of course, and lack of luster or just not shiny hair because the little scales of the cuticle are just so openly spaced out. So what determines our hair's porosity? Well, genetics does play a major role. So if your family has generally low porosity hair, it is possible that you will have it too. And the same goes for medium or high porosity hair. But then there's some external factors that we also need to consider. Some things like chemical treatments, if you've dyed your hair in the past or while you have locks, that will damage the hair cuticle and make it more open. So it will make your hair a lot more porous or make it more high porosity. Then also things like heat. This could be if you're using a hair dryer all the time on your locks and you're using the high heat setting, then that can also damage the cuticle. Things like overwashing, when you strip your hair of its natural moisturize, like the oils, the sebum, however that's pronounced. And if you're constantly stripping your hair of its natural oils and the natural way that it's holding its moisture, then you are removing that. You're also damaging the hair cuticle if you're overdoing it, of course. Then something that I hope you're not doing, but maybe you did in the past before you had locks, is if you're using a lot of harsh products on your hair. And finally, the environment, which is primarily the sun and the UV rays. Those can damage your hair as well. So The heat from the sun, especially like the intense UV rays, those can cause damage to the cuticle of your hair within hours of exposures. So now that we've entered into the summer season, it's definitely something to consider in terms of how you're going to protect your locks from heat damage that comes from the sun and the UV rays. I am about to launch a summer series to teach you guys how to protect your locks and the treatments that I do on my personal hair, so that I can make sure that the sun isn't damaging it too much, especially because in this season we tend to spend a lot more time outdoors and in the water, etc. So stay tuned for that. But I think that this video is a good prerequisite just to understand where our hair is at currently and how we can improve it, as well as which treatments are going to work and how they're going to work best based on our hair's porosity. So then, of course, we need to know, how do we determine our hair porosity? There's a few different ways to find out, and there's not like a foolproof technique or method. A lot of it is how your hair feels. And so there's a few questions that we're going to ask ourselves to kind of see where we think our hair is at, and then a few tests that we can do to kind of give us an idea. But there are a couple of things that you should know. First and foremost, our hair porosity is different in different parts of our hair. The lower ends being that they've been exposed to a lot more products and washing, the sun, and all of these things. Tendency is that the lower part of your hair is more of a higher porosity than the top part of your hair, just because of those reasons, because it's just been abused a little bit more than the newer hair that's growing, correct? Then the other thing is that these tests are better performed when you have clean hair. So you want to try them out either on the same afternoon when you washed your locks, or maybe the following day when your hair is dry, but it's still fairly clean. So let's get into the questions. How do we determine what's our hair porosity? First and foremost, you want to ask yourself, when you go into the shower to wash your hair, you turn on the faucet and the water starts penetrating your hair. How is it responding? If without manipulation, imagine you're not touching it, if the water is just kind of running off and you have to actually get in there and start squeezing the water into your hair so that it absorbs, that would be low porosity. If it takes maybe a few minutes for the hair to absorb all the water, again, no manipulation, then it would be about medium porosity. And if the second you turn on the water and your hair's under it, it's already just fully absorbed and dripping wet, then that would be high porosity. The next thing you want to ask yourself is, how quickly does your hair dry? So like I said, if the cuticle is tightly closed, then it's going to have a hard time absorbing water, but it's also going to have a hard time releasing that water once it has absorbed it. So if, I guess this is a little bit of a tricky situation, because when you have locks, being that the locks are already so tightly packed and dense, you're going to have it's going to take a while for your hair to dry anyway. But if you have any loose hair like I do, or maybe little sections in between your locks that are just new growth that isn't actually locked, then try to gauge based on that hair how quickly it's drying. If it takes a very long time for your hair to dry, then that would indicate low porosity. If it dries really quickly, then that would be high porosity. And if you're kind of somewhere in the middle where it doesn't, dry in a few minutes, but it also doesn't take forever to dry, then you're probably somewhere in the middle. The next test is called the float test method. And this, again, it's not foolproof, so maybe it won't give you like the most accurate results, but it is just an idea for you to kind of see what maybe your hair is like. And again, certain parts of your hair will have a different porosity than other parts of your hair, so you can just kind of test it out with different sections of your hair. What you're going to do is you're going to take a clear glass and fill it with, like, I don't know, maybe to the top, you're going to fill it with just some lukewarm water. So let's do that. Something like this. Okay. And then you're going to take a little strand of hair. I'm going to cut. My hair grows back fairly quickly, so it doesn't matter to me, but I'm going to just cut a little section of hair like this. And then you're going to put it into the glass of water. Now you want to kind of get it like sink it in a tiny bit just because it has this like surface tension. If you just leave it at the very top, it's going to probably take a while for your hair to give you results because of that surface tension at the top. So you want to break the surface tension, just kind of like push it in a little tiny bit. And then you're going to observe for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes. You're going to like see what your hair is doing. If the hair kind of sits near the top of the glass, then that would indicate low porosity, again, because it's having a hard time absorbing that water. If it floats near the middle of the glass, that would be medium porosity. And then if it sinks to the very bottom, that would indicate high porosity. And yeah, just give it a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and just kind of see what your hair does. Again, not a foolproof method, so don't take this one as fact, but maybe it just kind of gives you an idea of where your hair is at. Another test that you can do is the spray test. And so you're going to take your moisturizer spray. Basically, it's just water, and maybe you put essential oils in yours. I do with mine. So you're going to take your spray and just spray your locks as you would if you're just moisturizing them, no? And you don't want to get them soaked, but give it enough that these little water beads sit over the top of the hair. I don't know how much you're going to see on the camera, but basically there are little beads. I hope you can see something, but I'm not sure how that's going to look on video. But anyway, there's little beads that just kind of hang out at the surface of the locks. Give it a few minutes and see. If the beads just do not absorb and they just sit over the top of the hair, then that would indicate low porosity because your hair is just not absorbing it. If it takes a few minutes while the beads absorb, but they eventually do get absorbed, that would be about medium porosity. And then if you spray it and really fast, instead of it actually creating beads of water, it just boom, absorbs real fast, then that would be high porosity. Next, what you can try is called the strand slide test. And again, this, you can't use like an actual dreadlock for this because there's just no way you're going to feel it properly. So find one hair somewhere on your head that is not locked. And you're going to have to probably be in like a quiet place for this, or somewhere where you can kind of feel and be a little bit concentrated. But you're going to take one strand of hair and then grab it from the very tip, and then take your other hand, kind of like a little gentle clamp, like hold it down, and gently you're going to like pull your fingers up towards the scalp. So holding with this one and then pulling up with the other hand, just feel the strand and see how that feels. If it feels really smooth, that would indicate low porosity. If it feels fairly rough, that would indicate high porosity, but it could also just be medium porosity. But there's, if you'll feel, because again, the little scales, the cuticle scales go in a downward motion. And so if they're opened like this, as you feel your hair this way, you're going to feel like the little openings, but you have to just be like quiet and so that you can feel it, you know what I mean? So if it feels slightly rough, then you're leaning towards more of a medium to high porosity. If it feels very smooth, chances are it's low porosity. So now that we kind of have an idea of where our hair is at, then we can determine what kind of treatment is going to work for our hair to actually absorb all the moisture that we're giving it and retain it, which is essentially the most important part. One little side note is that water is what moisturizes your hair and oils are what seals the moisture in. So don't just put oils in your hair thinking that it's going to create moisture or help moisturize. You always have to get your hair wet or damp or spray it with your moisturizer spray before you add any oils or anything else to it, because otherwise it's not going to be actually moisturized. You're just going to put oil on a dry strand of hair, if that makes sense. When it comes to low porosity hair, you want to be using lightweight oils. I will leave a list here for you so that you can take a screenshot or jot some of the names down of these carrier oils that are generally lightweight. And these light oils are basically, what it means is that they penetrate the hair fairly easily. And being that low porosity hair has a hard time absorbing, you need the kind of oils that are as easily absorbed as possible. But in order to apply oils to your hair, you want to start either with damp hair or moisturized hair, like I said. And it might help to use a steamer to open up the hair cuticle, or perhaps after you get out of the shower. What I'll do is on the days that I'm not washing my locks, I'll just put them up in a bun and I'll let the steam from the shower get into my hair. So they will be fairly moisturized when I get out of the shower. And this would be a really good time to apply certain oils if you want, either around your scalp or in certain parts of your hair where you feel it's extremely dry. Less is more. Don't put a ton of oils in your hair either, because then you risk getting product buildup. And so to prevent product buildup, especially with low porosity hair, which you kind of have higher risk of, because it generally, the product that doesn't go into your hair will just sit on the surface, and then that will create product buildup. So if you notice that your hair is way too oily, or maybe over time you've been using products, then I would suggest maybe about every 6 to 8 weeks, you wash your hair with a clarifying shampoo, and that's going to help to strip all this extra product buildup off of your locks. Don't overdo it. So in either way, don't overdo it on the products and don't overdo it on the clarifying, because you don't want to strip your hair from all of these essential, the sebum and all this oils that you're putting on it. But at the same time, remember that because your hair has a hard time absorbing all of these products, that you're going to need to cleanse them, or cleanse your hair from the extra buildup that it might be causing. With medium porosity hair, you can use either light or medium oils, and I will put a list here as well, that are basically oils that have kind of just, they're not too difficult to penetrate the hair cuticle, but also not super heavy and dense. So these, you can also spray your hair, moisturize your hair as needed, and then apply the oils again as needed. Don't overdo it. Usually medium hair has a pretty good average of how well it is moisturized. So if you moisturize your hair daily, for instance every morning, then your hair probably is absorbing it and retaining it fairly well throughout the day. But if you feel like it needs like a little bit extra, then you can use these carrier oils to just kind of seal that in a little bit better, or have it retain a little bit better. And finally, with high porosity hair, you want to be using oils that are a little bit more dense, because then when the moisture is trapped with these oils, they will help the hair retain the moisture a lot better than a lightweight oil that is easily absorbed and then easily released. So the heavier oils will penetrate a little bit longer to help your hair retain that moisture. You can use water or rose water to spritz your hair prior, and then apply these oils as needed. And then about every other wash or every 2 weeks, you can do an apple cider vinegar rinse or a rice water rinse. And this is going to help to seal in the cuticle. It's going to reduce a lot of frizziness, and yeah, it's going to make your hair a lot shinier. So this helps to restore, in a sense, and just close the cuticle a little bit more. So if you have a lot of frizziness, this is really good. Make sure that if you are doing an apple cider vinegar rinse, that you are diluting it. Do not use just pure vinegar on your hair. Maybe do like a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 parts water, 1 part apple cider vinegar. You can also do like a 3-part. So 3 parts water, 1 part apple cider vinegar, depending on how your hair feels. And yeah, that you can let it sit on your hair for a few minutes, and then that will allow the hair to seal up a little bit more. And then also it helps to retain a lot more of that moisture that would otherwise be lost. And that is all that I have for you today. I hope this video was helpful for you and that you learned something. In my research, I know I was pretty mind blown by all this stuff that I was learning about this topic in particular, because we all have different hairs. So maybe what works for one person doesn't work for another. And this might be just one of those missing links that helps us to nail down a routine that actually will benefit our locks and keep them moisturized and healthy long term. And like I said earlier, this is a prerequisite to the Loc summer series that I'll be doing and releasing very shortly. So keep this video in mind whenever I'm posting the other future videos, because you want to kind of reference the treatments that I recommend and the products and everything. Reference that according to your hair porosity to just make sure that what you're doing is effective and that it's going to work for you. If you have any questions about hair porosity or locks in general, please leave them for me in the comments. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a like. If you haven't yet subscribed, there will be a lot more videos coming. So if you're enjoying lock content or want to learn more about locks and how to make sure that you have healthy, clean, and beautiful locks for the entirety of your journey, then please give me a follow or subscribe. And yeah, hit the notification bell so that you know every time I post a new video. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. I will see you very soon. And until next time, keep rocking your locks. Bye.